Welcome back to Main Street Informant. In this channel, we provide information related to wealth, money, power, finance, business, and economics. In today's video, we will be talking more about the economic catastrophe in China. With the mortgage crisis, bank failures, and all-around protests going, is a financial disaster nearing? Communist Party or CCP stunned the entire world in 1989 when they acted to undermine China's democracy. The CCP's authority was under threat by protests, so they decided to assault their own people in order to put an end to the demonstration. Many innocent Chinese students died as a result, and thousands more were injured. In the recent weeks, something similar has reoccurred in China. This time is worse. The Chinese people all throughout the country used social media to carry out a previously unheard of action, which has alarmed the CCP. For the first time in more than 30 years, the Communist Party of China, or CCP, is concerned for its survival. And the reason for this is the country's real estate bubble. In an effort to put pressure on the CCP and banks to treat them equitably, thousands of prospective homeowners stopped making their mortgage payments. One expert claims that the CCP does not view this scenario as a banking crisis, but rather as a political protest. If the crisis worsens, it may foreshadow the demise of China, and the CCP, as over $9 trillion in loans are in jeopardy of defaulting. This time, the mortgage issue may be 100 times worse than the 2008 financial disaster. So let's first discuss how the Chinese economy came to be in its current state before moving on to how these protests are endangering the CCP's authority. Owning a home is regarded as being a crucial component of the American dream here in the United States. But because it's not particularly affordable, it's gradually losing favor with younger generations. On the other hand, China is unique. In the last few decades, the value of home ownership has only increased. Real estate is one of the asset sectors that the general public trusts the most, and Chinese people place a great deal of cultural value on owning real estate. Real estate is a tool that families utilize to prepare for retirement. In China, the quantity of real estate you own is directly tied to your social status in society, and men who own real estate are viewed as desirable candidates for marriage. When all of this is taken into account, it is clearly why real estate values have risen over time. Because of all these variables and spectacular price increases in the past, it is easy to understand why everyone wants to purchase a property. Similarly, back in 2008, everyone in the United States was eager to purchase property since prices were only going higher. The housing markets was in such a rush that units were completely sold out by the time construction really began. Apartments had owners, but no homes. Thus, they simply stood empty long after construction was complete. The desire to cash in on the real estate boom by purchasing a second or third property drove up demand. In order to meet demand, supply dramatically rose. Because other asset sectors weren't as accessible, and developed real estate was the only thing people invested in. A lot of these homes were left empty after their owners merely purchased them in the expectation of a price increase. According to one study, real estate accounted for about 70% of Chinese families' wealth. 70%? You heard correctly. What happens to the concept of diversification? Oh, imagine if the real estate market experienced a problem. What would happen to 70% of the citizens' wealth? Evergrande made the most of this real estate market boom in China and rose to prominence as the biggest builders there. Evergrande was the largest Asian real estate corporation at one point in 2018. People tend to assume everything is legitimate when they see something that's enormous. But that's not necessarily the case all the time. Some of the practices taking place at Evergrande were wholly inappropriate. FOMO, or fear of missing out, into real estate was so bad that people were buying houses before construction even began. Usually, a company like Evergrande would lease a piece of land from the local government. Then they would sell the houses that are supposed to be built there and receive full payment for the houses before even breaking ground. People were more than happy to take out mortgage and buy houses just in hopes of owning real estate someday. The main issue here is that business like Evergrande wouldn't ordinarily use the proceeds of the sale to begin building. Instead, they would use it as a down payment to purchase more land, increasing their ability to sell flats in the future. This is already a major issue. Any person who is objective and honest may look at the system and realize that it won't last. This is the responsibility of the CCP, but they gave the municipal governments this duty instead, and this is where there is a different issue. These real estate pyramid schemes that firms like Evergrande were operating benefited local governments directly. Leasing land is a significant source of revenue for local governments in China. Leasing out lands provided the local government with almost 50% of its income. This meant that the higher the bids made for the land that the government was leasing out, the more risk these real estate developers were willing to take. This is an excellent illustration of skewed incentives. Even discussing the corruption that surrounds these land leases is not necessary to see all this taken into account. Regulators were consistently reluctant to intervene since it was in their best interests. The CCP recognized where things were going and made an effort to regain control by enforcing the 3 red line policies for real estate developers. It was a little too late, though Evergrande was simply one of many Chinese real estate firms using the same Ponzi scheme techniques. Evergrande would identify these homes as assets on their balance sheet in order to obtain further bank loans necessary to complete the building. These homes have previously been sold to other individuals, so no matter what accounting tricks you employ, this cannot be regarded as Evergrande's assets. This was how almost all Chinese real estate companies conducted business. The sector as a whole was heavily leveraged. Chaos results after the corporation skips one payment. People began investigating Evergrande's finances more closely at the beginning of last year after one of its subsidiary companies missed a loan payment. At this point, the house of cards began to fall apart and global contagions became public knowledge. Panic swept the economy when it was learned that Evergrande could default on loans totaling $300 billion. People are also aware that Evergrande is not the only company with this issue. The entire real estate industry is heavily leveraged and is already in danger of collapsing. After real estate developers racked up as a staggering $5.3 trillion in debt, the CCP stepped up to the plate. With the assistance of the CCP, Evergrande and other developers have been making sluggish progress ever since. Buildings purchased in 2019 are still under construction. Instead of actually finishing projects, all the money from new sales is basically going to pay off the liabilities of their corporations. Chinese home buyers have ceased making mortgage payments to the bank unless building picks back up. Some of these residents simply couldn't stand it any longer after investing their entire life savings in these unfinished constructions. In July 2022, home buyers from a project in central China declared that they wouldn't make mortgage payments unless this building progress was resumed. Over 300 projects in China are refusing to make mortgage payments by the end of July. Tens of thousands of people have voluntarily defaulted on their mortgage in an effort to attract the attention of the government officials. Additionally, protests against the building delays have been staged on the streets. With more people supporting the boycott, more than 300 infrastructure projects in China face the possibility of default. These projects currently represent more than $100 billion in debt held by China's major banks. This is not a good sign for China's banking institutions, especially when you take into account the fact that some significant developers also missed their debt payments last year. Banks and media outlets have been told by the CCP to stop reporting on boycotts of mortgages. These boycotts signify for Chinese banks an existential crisis that could be 100 times worse than what Americans' banks experienced in 2008. Banks are being compelled to take these losses, and if defaults continue to rise, there is a possibility that major banks may fail. People's withdrawals are already being restricted by one of China's top 4 state banks. Most of you, I'm sure, are already familiar with how the current financial system operates. But for everyone else, here is a brief summary. In most cases, banks lend the money that depositors place in them in the hopes of making a profit of interest. Consider that a bank receives $1,000 in deposits. The 10% reserve requirement for banks means that they can withdraw $900 and collect interest on it while only keeping $100 in the safe. In an economy, these kinds of transactions take place on a daily basis in the millions. And in essence, it is how the contemporary banking system operates. Banks are able to produce around $10,000 of money in circulation for every $1,000 in deposits. But for this system to function, depositors must have faith in the bank's ability to safeguard their funds. The US imposed strict lending laws following the 2008 financial crisis, making banks selective in who they lend to. Chinese banks now run the risk of losing depositor confidence as more and more home buyers are defaulting on their loans. Limiting withdrawals no way promotes the development of that trust. A bank run occurs when too many people begin withdrawing their deposits from the banks, which causes the banks to collapse. The CCP's biggest headache is in this area. To discuss the mounting possibility of these defaults, the CCP called an urgent conference with the banks. 7 out of the top 10 Chinese corporations are financial organizations, and the real estate and finance sectors together account for a significant portion of the Chinese economy. The banking industry accounts for 40% of China's GDP, while real estate makes up about 30%. In order to complete construction, the CCP is considering infusing more than $1 trillion into real estate businesses. They used to be quite cautious about saving failed businesses because they didn't want to encourage dangerous business practices in China. However, they are suddenly shifting their tone as they recognize that this could destroy the government. Additionally, the CCP has increased its censorship of this subject in an effort to discourage more people from participating in boycotts and demonstrations. I sincerely hope that you found this news to be helpful. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more specifics on China's financial troubles or global wealth, power, finance, business, and economy. You can check out more videos on the channel and share. It will help my videos to reach more people. See you in the next one.